And it was a helpful journey. But in that phase, I was the most peaceful, blissed out, I reached heaven on earth, if you will, but I was poor. I was very poor. And when I was wanting to do human things, I never could because I didn't have money, because I had these beliefs instilled in me that I was somehow a bad person if I desired wealth. Here's a good one. I was somehow not spiritual, or not as spiritual as Joe Schmo over here, because I valued money, right? And that kept me stuck for many, many years. And then at some point, 26, 27, 28, I started to like come more into my humanity, if you will, come more into my probably more shadow work, a lot more pain. I had been in a conscious relationship now for years, and that'll wake you up.
Oh yeah.
That'll be some serious work if you don't run from it. And so all these things to say, I know this is the longest winded question you've ever been asked, but like I said, I like to riff and give context. So I think that paints the full picture of the journey. And I think a lot of our listeners will be able to resonate with that. There's just these threads that really affected me, and I know they've affected a lot of others. And so I say all that to say it's been a serious journey for me. And it wasn't until a few years ago that I snapped out of it and I started actually being like more of a stronger masculine energy about like my frames around money, and like not accepting, like almost like an energy of like that would say like, you know what, fuck that. Like I do value money. I do want to be wealthy. I do see nothing wrong with having a sign that says get rich here, which we talked about. Some of these threads where I used to carry like guilt and shame as if I somehow wasn't spiritual. And now I have such a different perspective on it, and I've done different podcasts, and this podcast is literally called the Conscious Wealth Podcast, and I talk all about how, I wish there were more conscious multimillionaires, and if we're gonna change the world, we need money to be able to do that, to create the new systems and all that. So I say all of that to say I would love to hear maybe your journey as well as your current perspective, because like I said, from everything that I know of you, you're equally impressive up here, if we're talking about chakras or in the head, as well as you're very grounded and practical. That's at least my impression of you.
Well, thank you, man. I appreciate that. Takes one to know one. Yeah, I have a similar journey, man, with money and abundance and wealth. I grew up Christian, pastor's kid. We were pretty
Same here.
poor. Oh, did you really?
Not pastor's kid, but very strict Christian.
Okay.
Church every Sunday, all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's part of the belief system was, poverty and the meek shall inherit the earth and all the misunderstandings. Blessed are the poor. But as I grew older and realized, look, money is just freedom. It's nothing else than that. It's just the ability to be free and do what you want and be who you want. I realized that money can't be evil in and of itself, because the universe is neutral. And nothing is inherently good or bad. Like a lamp, here's the example of a lamp, can light someone who's writing the Bible or whatever, just as much as it can light up someone committing a forgery or something under the same lamp. So the lamp's not right or wrong. It's the way it's being used. So if money is like that, then why don't we want to use money for the kingdom, for good, right? For conscious creation, for manifesting oneness and unity and truth on earth. That would be one of the greatest desires we could have, really. And so I think that's where it shifted for me, was understanding that I don't want money or wealth or abundance because I want to buy lots of nice things so I can have a better life, because my life sucks. And if I have more things, I'll be happy. That's the karma that will get you into some trouble with money, where you no longer have money, but money has you. Well, once you know you're not in that place where you truly know and you believe and understand, money won't buy me happiness. Doesn't matter how much wealth I accumulate. It will never inherently make me happier. But what money can represent in your reality can be a demonstration of who you really are. And so that's why I want to manifest wealth, is because abundance is who God is, right? Because abundance is all that there is. Abundance is an eternal principle, an eternal truth in heaven. And what did Jesus teach us to pray? Let your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. So is there any lack in heaven? Last time I checked, there's not. So why are we tolerating lack on earth? Because we don't know who we are, right? We don't know we're the heirs of the kingdom. We don't know we are the Christ. We think we're the prodigal, you know? And so when we think we're a prodigal, we have prodigal consciousness. Lack.
How would you define prodigal?
So the prodigal being the famous parable Jesus told in the Bible of a son who leaves his father's house. He asks for his inheritance from his father. He runs off and squanders it on prostitutes and drinking and gambling. And he finds himself out of money and eating the slop from a pig pen with the pigs and rolling in the mud, which for a Jew is like the worst possible fate because they believe that pigs are unclean. And so
Yeah.
a lot of symbolism there. It's the rock bottom is what Jesus is saying. And the prodigal finally comes to his senses. It says, when he came to his senses, he said, oh, I shall return to my father's house because at least I can beg my father to be a servant in his estate, in his house. And surely even being a servant to my father's house is better than living here with the pigs, right, in the dirt. And so he goes back to his father's house, prepared to beg his father to just make him a lowly servant and forgive him, right, for leaving his estate. And it says, while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, threw off his sandals, and ran to meet him. And he embraces his son with that unconditional love of the father. And the son repents and says, I'm so sorry, please take me in as a servant. And goes on to say in the story, my son, you have always been mine, and all that I have has always been yours. So it's
Wow.
just in your mindset, you forgot who you are. And that's how Jesus taught us to pray, right? He said in Mark chapter 9, I think, whenever you pray, whatever things you ask for, believe you've already received them and they shall be yours. Why? Because the kingdom of heaven is a finished kingdom. All supply, all abundance already exists in heaven. And so we can't actually manifest something in the sense of it didn't exist and now it does exist. We really just attract to ourselves the infinite supply that always exists. So if you want to connect to the unmanifest realm of infinite supply in heaven, you have to know it already exists, and you have to know you're worthy of it as the son of the Father in that archetype, right? I am a child of the King. And so if I need wealth, if I need wholeness, if I need supply in any way, I know my Father loves to give me every good gift, as Jesus says. And so it's the knowing you've already received it that actually lets you access it. Because if you think, oh, I'm so poor, God, please make me not poor by giving me abundance that I don't already have. You're praying from prodigal consciousness, from poverty consciousness, and the universe doesn't know what that is, right? Because it only knows the finished kingdom, finished creation. Everything already exists and is in perfect supply. So you have to come into the principle of abundance to get abundance, right? And that's where people go wrong, is they pray from a personalized place. Again, prodigal consciousness, separation. Please help. Please give me money. I'm poor. I can't pay my bills. And it's like you're giving the wrong identity to abundance, right? You're giving the wrong card. You're giving the all capitals names, right? The fake self.
There's so many similarities here. It's crazy.
It's perfect, right? It's like, oh, sorry, I don't know who this lacking, separate, prodigal person is that you're claiming to be. I only know the Christ. So until you come to me as the Christ, asking for what's rightfully yours, your estate, then I can't answer you. I can just let you keep having this poverty consciousness. So it's like we have to know that abundance is an eternal principle of God's being. And from that place, I want to be abundant, not because I, the person, want to be rich and be impressive to my friends. No, I want to manifest abundance because abundance is who God is. And it's a demonstration of what's true.
That was such a beautiful response. What comes to mind when you're talking about that, especially at the end, the download that came through is, I want to be wealthy because I want to love God.
That's it.
To know God is to know wealth, and to know the devil is to know debt.
Yes, dude.
And it's just a choice. And so that's what I mean. There was this, I call it spiritual distortion, where the intentions were good, right? For a specific person at a specific time, learning non-attachment is really necessary. Let's say you've been egoic your whole life. You should learn to let go for a while.
Right.
But then kind of come in full circle I see that it's hard for a lot of people to let that one go. There's something to it. It's like if society's badge of honor is like what you make or what car you drive, right? Then the spiritual society's badge of honor is like how little you demonstrate you care about money.
Thing, dude. You got
and it's
it.
like it's an egoic flex.
Yes.
Like, but it's this weird reverse egoic flex. It's like the flex is how poor I sound or look or act like I am.
Yeah.
And it's like,
both are ego.
I love that perspective that you just shared. It's like, it's so clear. It's even clearer than I was already seeing it. To know God is to know wealth. Yes. And that's it. That's it right there. What is conscious wealth? It's that.
Yes. And I've heard you say this in some of your videos of like, one of my favorite lines from A Course in Miracles is, only what I have not given can ever be lacking, because I am the kingdom of heaven.
Wow.
What Jesus said. So, you know, if I feel like there's poverty in my immediate experience, well, I must not be giving abundance. Giving it where? Giving it in here to myself. I must not feel abundant, right? So it's like, can I give myself wealth and abundance and infinite supply? Can I know that it already exists and it already belongs to me, whether my circumstances seem to reflect it or not? Doesn't matter of what's true in eternity, which is that there's no lack in infinity. Like literally, the only thing that cannot exist in an infinite universe is lack.
Yeah.
So why am I believing in lack?
It sounds so silly when it's put like that, right? Lack existing in an infinite abundance. But it's something about being human. We lose that perspective, right? It's very hard to maintain that zoomed out, parasympathetic, non-attached perspective. Yeah. And it is. That's why it's so beautiful how well you know the scripture and everything. It makes sense why you're so grounded. It's not even about religion. Like we could get down that whole path too, because it sounds like we have another thing similar in that sense. But for my journey, it was this thing of my relationship to religion was guilt, shame, and punishment. And that was passed down through my lineage and reiterated through my church. And so I walked away from it and rebelled and kept getting in trouble, waking up in jail. And then I finally changed my life and I had to find spirituality. And that's why that was so revolutionary for me, because it introduced me to this notion of like unconditional love versus conditional, like versus the Father who's like punishing you versus like, no, it's just love, and not necessarily needing to put labels and everything on it. But it ties so much into this notion of like, a lot of people see this book as like, some see it as like a fable. Some see it as like rules that if you don't follow, you're going to burn. And then I see it as like a combination of like a cheat code to life, giving you like all of the esoteric principles that nature and all of the universe operate under. And if you just align yourself with that, you're going to thrive. Plus a book on commerce. And it gives you all the gems. Even just in you sharing that one story of the prodigal, which was a word I wasn't familiar with. Amazing. Even just in that, we weren't even talking about the sovereignty stuff anymore. And it was exactly like the answer to the problem of most citizens. That was the answer. So it's like, it's just crazy how much depth there is to that book, to the teachings. There's just, when you think you can't go deeper, there's infinitely more levels. Or I should say it's almost lenses. I don't know that it's a vertical, but maybe more of a horizontal of it. You might have read it and thought it applied to this part of your life, but then you enter a new season of your life and you read it and you're like, oh, that's also applies to this. And so that's beautiful, man.
Yeah. Yeah. You're so right. It's a book that will go as deep as you go in your understanding of who you are. The Bible will keep opening up, especially the teachings of Jesus, man. Because if Jesus was anything, he was a man who was fully realized and fully demonstrated as the perfect eternal self. We call it the Christ, that we all are. Mm-hmm. And I love this lens of that everything that exists is not separate from its idea. And that ideas are really the true, the eternal, the actual thing that exists forever in God's mind. So like, you, Jeremy, whatever Jeremy is, this essence you're reflecting right now, this persona, well, you actually are an eternal thought form in the mind of God, because God's eternal. So there
Yeah.
was never a time where the thought of or idea of Jeremy, as you are here and now, was not in God's mind. So this is what Jesus knew of himself, right? That, like he prays in John 17, Father, glorify them with the glory that I had with you before the foundation of the world was made. Like he was expressing this truth of like, I've existed in you forever. And I know that, but they don't know that. So give them that same knowledge, give them that same glory that I have with you, right? So if I know that I am what I really am supersedes this physical person, this persona. This physical persona is just a reflection of the eternal idea that's perfect and eternal in heaven. So if I know that, then I can connect to that eternal self that I really am, that always exists in God's mind and is never separate. And then I can say with Jesus, right? I am in the Father and the Father is in me. I and the Father are one. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. It was this understanding of like, I use the author and character analogy a lot. If God's the author of life and everything is, a creation of the author, then I am a character, let's say, in God's eternal cosmic play. And so a character would express all the same things about their author that Jesus expressed about his Father, right? I am in the author and the author is in me. When you see me, you see the author. It's like this oneness consciousness of who I really am. And from that awareness, abundance, wholeness, infinite supply manifests naturally in my reality because it's the awareness I'm walking in. So it's like it all comes back to your awareness of who you are. And that's why the system of the world wants to keep you afraid, disempowered, not knowing who you are, because only in that sphere can they control you and manipulate you. As soon as humanity wakes up to who we are, that we are one and we are sons and daughters of the Father, of the Creator, then no one has any power over me. Nobody can tell me what to do. Like we'll wake up to these ideas as obviously as the sky is blue. It should be so clear, right? But only because we're in this kind of spiritual hypnosis or something where we've fallen asleep to our real self, we need to wake up to who we are.
The remembering.
It's a remembering. And there's a line in the course I love that says, the rest that we're really looking for comes from waking, not from sleeping. Like the sleeping has been our problem. The sleeping's not the real rest, right?
Damn. I was getting visuals when you were talking about even referencing some of those parts at the end, and all of what you just explained is why Jesus walked on water. In terms of apply that to Admiralty Maritime. He walked on water because he's not governed on the water.
Right.
He doesn't even touch it.
He supersedes
and
it.
And you were just explaining like he is us and we are him. So it's like put it together, but we have to remember.
The water stands under him.
Yes. The water understands him. It's so dope. All the parallels. We could do this all day.
I love it.